We're here with Craig Gast, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. I'll give you a little background on him in just a minute. I thought it was important to talk to somebody I consider to be a maintenance guru, because in this unprecedented time of extended backlogs and constraints in the supply chain, there's nothing more important than staying on top of maintenance of both the equipment and the people systems that you have. So I thought it was apropos to talk to Craig. Craig, what have you been doing?
Served 6 years in the Navy. Went through the nuclear power program and served on submarines in the engine room. Was a nuclear reactor operator specifically. Got a
steely-eyed
denizen of the deep. Yes,
that's right. That's what I've been trained to say.
Yes, I earned an electrical engineering degree from Fresno State University, and while I was going to school, I worked in a box plant as an electromechanic. So that was 1985 when I got into boxes. So my career trajectory has been an electromechanic, maintenance supervisor, plant engineer, and I was a capital projects engineer for one of the largest integrateds. Retired a few years ago and am presently available for consulting.
And I consult with you on a regular basis.
Yes, you do.
So
yes, you do.
Every time I get a question I can't answer, I know who to call. I solicited a number of questions from members of our production advisory group, as well as CEOs, and they were not shy. So I'm just going to focus on a couple of these, probably publish this to that group, because there are many answers here. Craig is nothing if not thorough. So the first question is about staffing. I'm going to ask you a couple of staffing questions, and if we have time, I'll ask you about dealing with equipment manufacturers. The first question has to do with hiring the ideal maintenance manager. So what are the criteria that you use when you have the option of making that decision?
Sure. Well, boil it down to four or five different items. One of the first things is at least 5 years experience in industry itself. And that's not so much to say they've gone to work every day and do a great job for 5 years. What I would be looking for is someone who during that time has developed the mind's eye skill of the facility. There's a lot of moving parts to take care of in any manufacturing environment. So the person has got to have situational awareness. You can be head faked in any number of ways. A problem with a machine could actually be hundreds of yards away, and the problem is actually in the compressor room. So you want to make sure you've got somebody with that level of situational awareness. And that can be developed either through their association with a factory environment that they've been in for a number of years, or a lot of times I see it in military. I know in my case it was military experience in submarines. You didn't qualify submarines if you could get a mind's eye view of the ship. Mm-hmm. But certainly the other military organizations, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, typically situational awareness is actually it's a topical conversation and something that's taught. So someone who can maintain situational awareness. And it's not just for the machinery itself and the facility, because your facility touches a whole lot of things. It touches the EPA. It touches the neighbors around you, things like that. So you want to make sure someone's got that awareness of, can maintain that awareness. Additionally, with that background comes the hot topics in industry today, such as safety. Someone who's, if you speak lockout, tagout with them, they're not lost as to where to begin on if they wanted to make a program.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a lockout, tagout program. Knows exactly what to do versus what's LOTO. Totally different responses, and I've seen them both. to me.
And they might get that experience in the military. They might get it somewhere else in the industry or even in the same building. But they've been paying attention and they've been developing that awareness and that critical thinking skill.
Critical thinking.
Systems thinking. Really.
Well, system, because it's one big system.
Yeah.
And it pumps all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that position. The factory is not far from what you're thinking about on a daily basis at any moment. Some sort of an engineering background is preferable, not absolutely necessary, but they should have enough technical background to be able to provide sound troubleshooting advice to your technicians, and also be able to detect when somebody is not on a clear path to success and is, be kind, but they're masking the fact they don't know by speaking techno gibberish.
Mm-hmm. So interpersonal skills have something to do with this.
Well, you need to do that without deflating somebody, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You also want to, I would also advocate that if you have an approach that requires corrective action, that your team is not afraid to approach you with a problem. Folks who are so lax that anything will slide by, and then others that are so severe that no one wants to approach them with a problem. But you don't want people to hide a problem from you, and you don't want them to feel like they have to hide the fact that they don't know what to do next and are going to approach you.
Right. So it might be analogous to like we were talking safety. I want to have a very strict safety policy where we're going to hear about any problems that come up, but I don't want it to be so strict that people are cutting themselves and going home with their hand in their pocket because they don't want to be the one who broke the chain.
Right.
The chain of days of going without an accident.
Sure.
It's like we want to find problems so that we can fix them. We don't want to not have problems.
True. Which brings another piece. You want someone who's focused on process improvement. How can I make this place better? So in addition to the leadership skills, like being able to build a team, manage a team, etc., knows when to lead, follow, or get out of the way. Sometimes it's just as important to step back and let others take over, and have, and it's frightening at times to feel like you put your career in the hands of people while they're solving a problem and you're standing back.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to say, do what I did. You got to get over it, man. Just get over it. Watch them fly. Sometimes they'll be lost.
If you don't, then you'll be the only maintenance person.
You'll be the only maintenance person. You'll be living there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be living.
So let me ask you a related question, because I know there's more we could do with that. But there's one question that came up that was related to staffing. So we talked about the maintenance leader, the maintenance manager, the plant engineer, whatever we're calling that person. And that would probably depend on the size of the plant. There are places that are sometimes pretty small, but they have all their parts locked up, and they've got a clerk in there. That's their main thing. Is they're just maintaining the inventories and meeting out the parts to people as needed. What do you think of that?
I would wince at that. It does keep in line with keeping your parts under control and locked up. But that's not an 8-hour-a-day job in a small factory. A maintenance coordinator would be a better use of the labor dollars.
And how is that different?
Well, the maintenance coordinator would be making the phone calls for ordering the parts, making sure the POs are complete, participate in the receiving, put them away, make sure they're in. So that's the storeroom coordination. But they would also be assisting the maintenance supervisor with setting up the preventative maintenance program and monitoring that paperwork is flowing, keeping track of the work orders, making sure, when the work orders come in, if you have a paperwork system, that they're completed fully. And if it's an electronic system, again, looking for errors and discrepancies and being able to red flag whoever's submitting them to get those things corrected. So they'd be maintaining the integrity of your material history, the flow of your preventative maintenance program, kitting parts for your proactive maintenance process. A thumb rule is it's not only planned maintenance if I planned it, which sounds silly, but in order for it to be planned maintenance, I had to think about it yesterday. If I'm doing a task today and it was kitted last night, assigned to me this morning, that was planned maintenance. If I'm given a box of parts 15 minutes ago and said, go do this, that's not planned maintenance. So the maintenance coordinator would move you more towards planned maintenance and proactive than reactive, which I see a lot of smaller plants are reactive. Sit back and assess yourself, and you can. Anybody who's been in a factory or any factory long enough, they know this answer probably right to their core. Is the plant running me, or am I running the plant? If you feel like you're running the plant, then you're on the road to being proactive. The maintenance coordinator job is an 8-hour job. A parts clerk, there's better ways to spend money.
No, I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I heard you say in there was that the maintenance coordinator may be the scorekeeper as well. That's saying, hey, we opened this many, we closed this many work orders.
Sure.
We're doing. Here's how we are. If you have a maintenance budget, here's how we are against here's our spend.
Right. Right. And that's exactly right. Because those facts and data, they need to be in the maintenance supervisor. When the maintenance supervisor shows up, you shouldn't be spending the first 2 hours trying to figure out what happened last night. To have someone who can take that information, take that data from yesterday, turn it into actionable information, sets up your maintenance manager or your plant engineer, whoever, for a better opportunity to be successful with what to do for the rest of the day. If you're just catching up with yesterday, when you walk in the plant, you're not going to solve yesterday's problems anymore because the new ones are going to change your focus almost immediately.
I think we could talk about the people side of this and the skill set qualification for different levels of maintenance. I do want to ask you one thing while we still have time. There were a number of questions submitted about the relationship with original equipment manufacturers. We buy the machine. How should we structure that contract? How should we how do we hold them accountable, and how do we have reasonable expectations? I think that I'm adding that part.
Right. Yeah. On the purchase of new equipment, you buy a piece of equipment typically because you want to see a quantum change in the dynamics of your factory. And with that comes technology. When you order a piece of equipment, you need to make sure you're clear with what you want before the PO is issued. So the design of the build should be a team effort. The internal and external, what needs of customers are you trying to solve with this, and what are your expectations? And those two questions kind of lead themselves to what to do next. What do you want to solve for your internal, external customers? That gets down to specifications. How do you spec the machine to solve those problems for those people? Up front, you want to know what you're building and why. So that gets to the specifications of the machine. It also helps you outline what are your acceptance tests going to be when the machine is proven out and handed over to you.
So an acceptance test is like a performance guarantee on the part of the OEM and
no performance.
I'll make a payment if you do the
Well, certainly when you write, so beforehand you do your research. What do I want specifically, and how am I going to prove that it's doing what I paid for with an acceptance test? You get those written into the contract, and that generates the PO. So now you've shaken hands. We're going to get this machine. But the PO should be structured is typically structured in a payment program where there's a down payment of X percent, a progress payment of Y percent, and a final payment upon completion of the acceptance test, which includes all punch list items are cleared of W percent. So you've got your three different percentages. The more you can hold in the last payment, the more attention you'll get when asking for your problems to be solved. Mm-hmm. So if you're lucky enough to go, say, 20, 30, 50, believe me, when you tell them that it doesn't work the way you want, there will be Johnny on the spot to fix it for you. Mm-hmm. If you're something different, where the last is like maybe 3%, you may or may not get be first in line to get your problem solved. So typically 20% is great, but you want the last payment to hurt. There's no other way to put it. You want the last payment to hurt. You maintain your leverage. And we're all business people. They understand that. They want to do a good job for you, and they'll typically agree to that. Your acceptance test should stress the machine. If you've got a machine and they say it's going to produce a certain amount of product quality at XYZ speed on a big board, big long wide board, you want to structure a multicolor job or a wide flute or whatever to stress the machine on a big job, and you want to stress the machine on a narrow job. And then more than likely you've got a complicated job, especially if it's a die cutter. Does it clean the scrap as advertised? Mm-hmm. Is the die blanket grinder working as advertised? Does it work on the fly as advertised? Your acceptance test needs to stress the machine, so you need to be aware of what the machine can do. Have a checklist and make them prove it, because it will never be more perfect than the day it's turned over to your factory. And this includes the way it arrives. I've had machines show up and the pallet was busted. Immediately registered a complaint because one of my peers had a machine that showed up with the pallet busted and the frame was tweaked. And you couldn't detect that just by looking at it. You couldn't even measure it. But when the machine got in place, suddenly became very apparent the frame was tweaked. Now, that didn't happen on my project, but I made certain that I told the project manager that you sent it to me on a broken pallet. Here's pictures, and I'm anticipating this. What are you going to do about it? You want them to start thinking about solutions in your behalf as quickly as possible. I'd also make sure you do not shortchange the training. Your crew needs to make sure they know how to run that machine, so the training should start up front. If you simply buy a piece of machinery, scrape the floor, plop it down, and then say, make it run like a Ferrari, it's not going to happen, and you're going to play catch up trying to get your return on investment.
And I can't blame in my experience, I can't blame the equipment manufacturer wholly for that, because I probably have, if I'm the guy who bought the machine, I probably have 4 or 5 people lined up with equipment stressing jobs right out of the, when I'm supposed to be fingerprinting, I'm trying to run a job. We have a tendency on our end on purchasing it to also contribute to that long-term effect by shortchanging the training. I've always asked, and I didn't make this up, I learned it from a very smart man, but he said if you begin with your basic training and then have a gap and then come back for performance training,
sure,
that you're really going to be money ahead.
Absolutely. New equipment does not come with the same job behaviors. You put in a high-speed corrugator with automatic splice sequencing and whatnot, it's going to be all the guy can do on the wet end to keep rolls chucked up and the machine running. Where before they could chuck a roll, 45 minutes pass, and there's some slack time. Mm-hmm. High-speed corrugator, not so much anymore. Same thing with a high-speed flexograph. Mm-hmm. So some of these machines run so fast that you could burn through your entire stock for a order before the first box reaches the load former. So you want to make sure, and that's, you want to shorten that learning curve as quickly as possible. And you want to get a grip on how the job's going to change as quickly as possible. Otherwise, your return on investment starts to slow down.
Well, I appreciate the way that you've answered these questions, and there's even more information in the document that we'll publish in your response to all the questions that we ask. I'll put your information together with this document for people so that they'll be able to ask you directly.
Sure.
I appreciate your time and your participating in our little series.
Well, yeah, it was my pleasure, and as always, I'm glad to help.
Thanks.